The flashing lights in your rearview mirror don't just signal that you might be getting a ticket. They signal a moment where every word you choose can either protect you or quietly put you at risk. I've watched this happen too many times. Calm drivers turn nervous. Confident people start rambling. Smart travellers accidentally talk themselves into trouble. And the worst part is they don't even realise they're doing it until it's too late. Let me ask you something honestly. During your last traffic stop, did you talk more than you needed to? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know what you said and how it turned out. Share it below, because as you keep reading, you're going to see exactly why that instinct to explain yourself might be the very thing that works against you. Most people think traffic stops are simple. You get pulled over, you answer a few questions, maybe you get a ticket, and you move on. That's the surface level version. But under the surface, a completely different process is unfolding. When an officer walks up to your vehicle, they are not just asking about your speed or your brake lights. They are assessing risk. They are gathering information. They are building a mental report before anything is even written down. From the second they see your car, observations begin. The state on your license plate, the type of vehicle, the number of occupants, whether the windows are tinted, whether you slowed down abruptly, whether you're near an airport corridor, a known drug route, or a high theft area. By the time they reach your window, they already have a framework in their head. Now here's where most drivers go wrong. They think talking will make everything smoother. So when the officer asks, "Do you know why I stopped you?" they immediately start guessing. Was I speeding? I'm sorry if I was speeding. I'm late for the airport. I didn't see the sign. I was just trying to keep up with traffic. That single question is not a casual conversation starter. It's investigative. If you admit to speeding, you've just handed over a confession. If you speculate, you might confirm something the officer wasn't even certain about. If you mention being late for a flight, you've now introduced stress and urgency into the narrative, which can justify closer scrutiny of your driving behaviour. And here's what people misunderstand. Officers don't need you to confess to write a ticket. They already have their radar reading, their pacing observation, or their visual estimate. When you admit fault, you're simply strengthening the case against yourself. A calm, simple response like, "I'm not sure, officer," keeps the conversation neutral. It doesn't admit guilt, it doesn't escalate. It leaves the burden of explanation where it belongs. Let's talk about tone, because tone is everything. You can say the right words the wrong way and create tension instantly. I've seen drivers say, "Why did you pull me over?" in a way that sounds like a challenge. That subtle edge in your voice changes the dynamic. The stop becomes adversarial. Once that shift happens, the officer becomes more formal, more procedural, and less inclined toward leniency. There's another phrase that sounds harmless but can spiral quickly. "I'm in a hurry." You might think this humanizes you. It doesn't. What it does is reinforce that you are rushing, which can justify reckless driving or aggressive driving concerns. If you're headed to an airport and you say you're about to miss your flight, the officer may reasonably think your urgency influenced your driving decisions. You just confirmed their suspicion. Now let's dig deeper into something that really surprises people. Volunteering information about where you're coming from or where you're going. If you're travelling, especially near major airports or along interstate corridors known for interdiction work, officers are trained to listen for inconsistencies. They'll ask, "Where are you headed?" It sounds casual. It isn't. If you hesitate, change details, or over-explain, that gets noted. If your story doesn't match what they observe in the vehicle, that gets noted too. Imagine this scenario. You say you're going to the airport for a quick overnight business trip, but your back seat is packed with luggage. That inconsistency doesn't automatically mean guilt, but it creates curiosity. Curiosity leads to more questions. More questions extend the stop. And this is where people say the wrong thing in a way that truly gets them into trouble. I don't answer questions. Legally, you have the right to remain silent beyond providing required documents in most routine stops. But context matters. If you snap this out aggressively before the officer even explains the reason for the stop, you've signaled confrontation. That can escalate quickly. Backup might get called, the stop lengthens, the atmosphere tightens. There's a smarter way to handle it. Provide your license, registration, and insurance when required. If questioning shifts into areas unrelated to the traffic violation, calmly say, "I prefer not to answer any questions." Same protection. Completely different tone. Let's address something else that's become popular online. I know my rights. This phrase feels empowering, but it's vague and often delivered with attitude. If you truly know your rights, you don't need to announce them. You exercise them specifically. You don't consent to searches. You ask if you're free to leave. You remain calm. Announcing that you know your rights often sounds like a warning shot. Officers are trained to maintain control of encounters. When they sense a challenge, they shift gears. They slow everything down. They document more carefully. They become less flexible. Now here's where it gets serious. You can't search my car. Depending on how this is said, it can create immediate friction. The correct phrasing is simple and calm. I do not consent to any searches. That statement preserves your Fourth Amendment protection without escalating the encounter. The difference may sound subtle, but psychologically it's enormous. Consent searches are one of the most misunderstood parts of traffic stops. Many drivers think if they have nothing illegal, there's no harm in agreeing. But vehicles often contain items people forget about. An old prescription bottle without a label. A knife that violates a local ordinance. A legally owned firearm that isn't stored according to that state's transport laws. Large amounts of cash that raise suspicion. Once you consent, you've waived a powerful legal protection. And if something unexpected is found, arguing later becomes extremely difficult. There's also the danger of casual admissions. I only had one drink. Even if you're under the legal limit, that statement just opened the door to field sobriety tests. Officers are trained to investigate impaired driving thoroughly. Once alcohol is mentioned, the stop can transform into a DUI inquiry. That's a completely different legal landscape. Or consider this one. I just bought this car. If the vehicle registration hasn't been updated properly, or if there's any paperwork issue, you've now highlighted a potential compliance problem. Even innocent explanations can create additional scrutiny. I want you to understand how officers think in these moments. Their primary concerns are safety and control. They approach every vehicle, not knowing who's inside. They assess hands, movements, tone, and compliance within seconds. Sudden movements, argumentative language, or emotional reactions heighten alertness. And heightened alertness leads to more structured, cautious procedures. Now imagine you're exhausted after a long trip. Maybe you flew into a major hub, rented a car, and you're driving late at night. You get pulled over near the airport, you're frustrated. You say something sarcastic like, "What did I do now?" Sarcasm rarely lands well on the side of the road. What you see as humour can be perceived as disrespect. Respect isn't about submission. It's about maintaining stability in a moment where authority is legally defined. There's something else most drivers don't think about. Body cameras. Everything is recorded. Your words, your tone, your pacing. If the stop escalates and charges are filed, those recordings are reviewed by supervisors, prosecutors, and possibly jurors. The roadside is not just a conversation, it's evidence. Let's talk about refusal to comply with lawful orders. If an officer instructs you to step out of the vehicle during a lawful stop, courts have consistently upheld that authority for officer safety reasons. Arguing roadside about constitutional theory is not going to end in your favour. Refusal can result in obstruction or resisting charges. That doesn't mean you surrender your rights. It means you assert them intelligently and at the correct time. Here's the mindset I recommend. Neutral, minimal, controlled. Provide what's legally required. Avoid volunteering extra details. Don't argue facts on the shoulder of a highway. If you believe a citation is unfair, that's what court is for. The roadside is not the stage for legal debate. You might be thinking, isn't being friendly helpful? Sometimes. But over-friendliness can lead to oversharing. Nervous chatter fills silence with information you didn't need to give. Silence feels uncomfortable because humans are wired to explain themselves. But silence, when calm and respectful, is not suspicious by itself. In fact, it often shortens the interaction. Before we wrap this up, I want you to picture something. Red and blue lights. Your pulse rising. An officer approaching. In that moment, your biggest risk isn't always what's in your car, it's what comes out of your mouth. The wrong phrase can shift a simple speeding stop into a prolonged investigation. A careless admission can trigger a DUI inquiry. A confrontational tone can eliminate the possibility of a warning. And the people who navigate traffic stops most effectively are not the loudest. They are not the most argumentative. They are the most composed. So the next time you see those lights behind you, remember this. You don't win by talking more. You don't protect yourself by being combative. You protect yourself by being precise. Say less. Stay calm. Know your rights without announcing them. Because during a traffic stop, the wrong sentence isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's a simple, ordinary phrase said at the worst possible moment. And avoiding that mistake might be the difference between driving away with a warning and leaving in the back of a patrol car.